and welcome to The Journey is Real. I'm CJ Peterson, and we talk to real people with real passions who share a real portion of their heart. Today, my guest is Jamie Loreth, and we've titled her podcast, Doing My Part. Thank you for coming on today, Jamie.
Thank you for having me.
We had a little technical difficulties in the beginning. So we seem a little anxious, that's why. Hopefully they'll come through glitch-free. Your basic passion is something regarding the pink blanket. Would you mind explaining to those listening what that is?
So the pink blanket is actually two things. First of all, it started out as my first novel that I decided to write. And from that, during the writing process, I was inspired to create the Pink Blanket campaign, which is a campaign that just offers a small form of hope or comfort to women, children fleeing domestic violence by offering or supplying women's shelters around the world, hopefully, with pink blankets and hopefully, necessities or whatever it is that one may need when they arrive to those type of accommodations, leaving circumstances that they may not necessarily have been able to leave with anything with. So
Being a domestic violence survivor, I can appreciate this. And that's one of the things that kind of stood out to me when I was reading through your story. Can you share a little bit about the book first? Let's tackle the book first.
Okay. So I've always wanted to be a writer. Kind of one of those, dreams that you have, but don't ever anticipate achieving. And it was just as the older I got, the stronger the desire got. And I was living in a really unhealthy marriage at the time. My youngest was going to soon be graduating, and I was nearing 40, and just really started contemplating life and where I was at and what that looked like for me once my kids were gone, just marriage wise, life wise. Was I happy? Was I going to have regrets? And it all kind of boiled down to the fact that I didn't want to have regrets, and it was something that just wasn't seeming to fade and continued to grow. And so I'd had ideas come and go over the years for books, and nothing ever really stuck. And one day I deliver mail on foot as well, so I have a lot of thinking time in the day, and an idea for a story kind of came to me, and it just kind of seemed to stick. And so I kind of always there, never really made notes, paid attention to it much. But kind of as my home life was becoming more and more not good, this idea just kind of seemed to keep blossoming. And so pretty soon I was jotting notes, and I'd get ideas here and there, and then pretty soon it just came to the fact that, would I even be able to do this? How would I do this? So then I kind of started researching, what are the chances of publishing a book? I've never been to university for that type of thing. So it had been many years since I left school, and what were my possibilities? And so I'm Googling authors, and I'm Googling publishers, and I'm Googling how-tos, and
it was one of both. I am an author and I'm a co-owner of a publishing company. So
nice.
Next book, get in touch with me.
I will do that. And so, so I ended up choosing the self-publishing option, mainly because in everything I was reading, and I mean, I know they say don't believe everything you read, but for me, it was kind of like I had to do this. And to me, it seemed like maybe it was the fastest route to do this, maybe not the correct one.
Not necessarily, because anymore now, the hybrids or the indie authors as well, they actually are right up there and can compete with some of the big boxes. So it's not anything. I was an indie author to begin with, and still technically am, because I own half the publishing company. So nice. Technically I still am. People, as long as it's a quality book, is what people care about nowadays. So don't think any less of it. That's your book. You put it out there.
Yeah, and that's something I've kind of learned along the way too, was, even people have said, oh, you're an author, and I'm like, I have a hard time accepting that title, but I am, and I've gotten there, and so I just, it was probably a couple years. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I was I like all of my ducks in a row. And so I like to make sure I'm doing everything so that I'm happy with my product, I guess, at the end. And so, yeah, I just did a lot of researching and time, and then, the story kept developing in my head,
What's the
and
basic storyline? I don't want to go into details, so I don't want you to give away anything in the book. But what's the
yeah.
basic storyline if you were to give what's called an elevator pitch, which is like a
Okay.
90-second pitch? What would that look like for your book?
So it is based on a woman who is trying to, or who's planning to leave her abusive husband. And it's the obstacles that women face. And it's not, I don't just presume domestic violence to women, but my story and the story I've written with Taya as the main character is just the trials and the struggles that she faces. It's completely fiction. It is not reflective of my life in any of the events or circumstances that she faces. However, I do consider it somewhat of, I say, maybe my therapy,
Mhm.
in the fact that I'm an avid reader. I mean, I love to read. I read. And it was just kind of an outlet for me to be able to express some of the emotions and feelings I was feeling in my situation, and I guess put them through her. And that was kind of one of the things that I wanted in my book, is I wanted to be relatable.
Mhm.
It's a pretty serious topic. It's one that doesn't, isn't addressed, and it's far too common. It really is, and it shouldn't be. And it remains hidden behind closed doors too often. And so I just really wanted to be relatable while writing fiction, and of course for the entertainment purposes only. I myself use reading as an escape, and I always, as though I seem to be stuck in troubled marriages in my past, I always, I guess I look to reading kind of like as an outlet, or the possibility of still having that happy ending.
Yep.
And so I kind of wanted to put all of that together. And it is the first in a series, so there is still more books to come
Mhm.
in the story. And it just, yeah, it's about a woman who faces the struggle of leaving an abusive husband, and just the raw emotions and real emotions that we face when we're in those situations. It's, a lot of people don't understand. A lot of people do, too many people do, unfortunately, because they're living it. But a lot of people who don't have that experience don't understand. And you always hear, well, why don't you leave?
Mhm. You
It's
can't.
not that simple. It's
No.
just
Well,
not
not
that
you can't,
simple.
but
Or why wouldn't?
not that simple.
Or
Yeah.
I would, I mean.
What I explained to people being a domestic violence survivor, and I kind of did a little what you did. The Grocery Stored series does touch on, my Grocery Stored series touches on domestic violence.
Oh,
And a
okay.
portion of the proceeds goes to Hope Store, which is a domestic violence shelter here in Plano.
Nice.
And that's the one that I went through. That's the main reason why I picked them.
Oh,
And a
okay.
lot of times we're like, well, why did you stay? And the best way I explained it is it's kind of like putting a frog in a pot of boiling water. If you put that frog in the pot of boiling water, it's going to jump out like that. If you put it in tepid water, it's not going to know it's in trouble until it's too late.
Yeah.
And that's the basic analogy I can use to make people to understand it. Because half the
Mhm.
time you don't know what's going on. And when you do, you kind of think you're crazy because they're charismatic to every other person around you. And then begin to think, is it me? What am
Yeah.
I doing? And it's not you.
Yeah.
And you're not alone. And there are a myriad of stories, male and female, where this stuff happens. And more people like you and me, when we tackle this, some of the stories in the book are true and some of them are not. I tell people, I'm not going to tell you which ones are.
Yeah.
But you're welcome to guess, but I'm not going to tell you.
Yeah.
And some people are like, well, there's no way that would happen. I'm like, oh no, actually that one is the true one. Truth is stranger than fiction. Just
It's
kind of all.
surprising how that is. Yeah.
Mhm. So you're taking the story. How did you make the leap from the story to the pink blanket? Is it like a foundation or charity,
So,
or how would you term that?
um, well, my plan is, yeah, like a charity, I guess, and it's in the process of being constructed, so it's not active or going yet, because there are legally certain hoops, and because I would love to be able to create this to be effective worldwide. There's all the legal stuff and all of that. So I'm in the process of getting that going. And in fact, it wasn't actually even something that I ever thought that I would probably be doing. It was basically while I was writing, you get these ideas pop in your head, and I mean, I've always wanted to be able to help, do your part in the world and that kind of thing. And so as I'm writing, you're, oh man, if this would ever be, and if I could ever actually do this, if I could make enough money, and my idea was, and it was kind of also a little push to keep going, because there was many times I was writing and I'm like, I can't do, like, this is too much. What am I doing here? I've
And
committed to something I can't
yeah,
complete.
the one thing that keeps me going when I reach those points is people are like, well, do you read the Amazon reviews? Actually, I do. And here's why. I pull 2 or 3 ones where the book has touched that person's heart in particular, and I print them out and I keep them in the treehouse, which is my office, for days where I'm really discouraged because I'm like, okay, why am I doing this? There's no way anybody's going to like this, and blah, blah, blah. And I look at those reviews and I'm like, okay, this is who I'm writing for.
Yeah.
So when you get those reviews that really just touch your heart, print them out. I'm not kidding. Do it. And
That's
that will
great.
continue to keep you going forward, because the ones that don't like it, and you're always going to find trolls,
Yep.
they're going to slam you up one side and down the other. I let my readers defend me, and they do a really good job. So
Yeah.
don't even approach it. Just let it go, and the readers will take care of it. But you didn't write the book for that person.
No.
You write the book
And
for the others and for yourself.
right. Yeah. And that was kind of what I had to, lots of times my ego would get in my ear or my head, and, you have to shut them out. And so I guess when this idea for the campaign started to roll in my head, it was another push to keep going. And so as I was doing this, while I was writing, I happened to, it was a whole process. The title came to me in the middle of the night one night. Actually, I was about 3/4 of the way through the writing process before I even had a title. And
I keep a post-it note app on my phone for that very reason.
yeah, and that I have notepads, paper, like everything, because you just never know when the idea is going to strike. And so, anyways, I woke up that night and I'm like, the pink blanket. And I'm like, well, that's weird. But I mean, there was a pink blanket in the book, and kind of the story, it all kind of worked. I'm like, well, maybe. And so, anyways, kept that idea there, and, going through the publishing process, what are your ideas? And so it was in a couple of weeks later, I was in a local shop, and there was like, and I'm not a pink person, I'm just
I'm,
not,
I'm
but
a
there was, yeah, I love purple and black.
purple.
But so I
Black,
see
yep.
this beautiful pink cozy blanket in this local shop, and I had to buy it. I bought it,
That's
and
the
I actually
one
kind
for
of,
those who are listening. She actually has a pink blanket behind her on like over a rack or over a chair or something.
yeah,
And it's a nice
yeah,
fuzzy one. Is that the one you got?
that's the one I got, and I've ever since, it's always been by me when I'm writing. Like I've just always sat with it. I can't explain it. I just have. And so I was just kind of, it just all started tying together, and that's when it was like this idea kind of formed, and I was like, maybe it's not much, but maybe it could be something, right? And it's maybe achievable one day. And so I just kept writing and writing and writing. And then when I, finished and I got through that, I wasn't, again, confident. At the time when I wrote, I told nobody. I told nobody I was writing. I didn't want any negative
My question.
energy,
Yep.
and I didn't want opinions that I just wasn't ready for. And, I remember telling my husband at the time that, I wanted to be a writer. And I mean, that's kind of a, off the wall idea, but I did. And he laughed in my face. And that was kind of the point where I went, okay, this is me. I have to do this for me. And so it was kind of, like I said, it was like a self-confidence, because I mean, being a survivor, we know that our confidence, self-esteem, all of that, there's literally shreds left, if anything, lots of times by the time we finally get away and stuff. And so it was kind of one of those things that just, I used to keep building myself, to keep going. I knew I needed to I knew I deserved the life I wanted to. My life was worth something. And so as I kept going in the process, I finally had published my book. I still hadn't told, I'd only told maybe a handful of very close friends at this point, because I was starting to get excited. I had actually, accomplished it. One of the things that I did do in the writing process was I opted to have a Kirkus review done, because to me, for some reason, Kirkus has always been in my head as a writer. You see it lots of times. And so it was part of the package that, when I was publishing, they asked if I'd like to include that, and I did. And so even at the time, my publicist was like, it's really hard to get a good review. Maybe you want to just wait, because it was about a 2-month time frame from when um, I would get the review back, and so it was going to delay actually printing for
Mhm.
that much longer. And so I ended up, no, I want to wait, because I'm like, if I can have something on my book, I want it on my book. And so, anyways, when I got my review back, she was as shocked as I was. And I, crying, reading the review, and I'm like, okay, wow, somebody liked this book. So maybe somebody else will like this book. And so then that's when I kind of started to, branch out and tell my friends, a couple of my friends here and there. And and then I had a publicist reach out to me. And when I spoke with Tracy, um, her and her partner at the time had asked me what my long-term goals for my book were. And so I just kind of blurted out my pink blanket, women's shelters idea. And right away they were like, oh, wow, that's awesome. Like, that's incredible. Like, you don't have to wait. There's people out there who are willing to support and promote and do all these things, and you can get this going. And I was just like, wow, okay.
So
Like,
what how did you go from it being a dream and in the book to the campaign? What made that, what helped make that leap?
so just the fact that they actually sparked the initiative that I could do this without waiting until I had enough money. Because I mean, realistically,
Yeah,
what are your
what
chances,
you're running
right?
to, yeah.
Yeah. And so I just really was like, okay, you know what? I want to do this. And so now it's just been, I'm not even sure. Some days I still think I'm in la la land, even trying to get this together, because it just came so much faster than I ever expected. And then COVID hit. And so that put a huge delay in a lot of things, but I've just kind of got going at it again here the last few months. And it's just, I mean, when I want something, I, I do have the tenacity to try and go after it. I mean, I'm not a quitter. I don't like to think I'm a quitter.
No, and
And
a lot of females that I've run across, even in the shelter, and other females that I've spoken with who have come from abusive past, the reason that we get picked, so to speak, is because we are strong-willed and we do have a ton of tenacity and we are obstinate, and they take it as a challenge.
yeah, absolutely.
So no, take that as a badge of honor.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not a trait that I mean, sometimes maybe I'm like, should I quit? Should I quit? Does that, but I do appreciate that about myself, because I feel like lots of times I could still be stuck in a miserable situation, that I believe my drive to be happy is what finally got me away. Whether I guess whatever the end result is, at least it's not being stuck and having regrets in that aspect of my life anymore. And so, yeah, I just really hope that it can all, and I hope, I believe that will all unfold. And like I said, I'm one of those people that believe in divine timing and the universe, coming together to make things work out. And I mean, I believe that's probably going to be a huge part of it, but I'm just going to keep going until I can get where I need to be. I mean, I don't think it's going to be too difficult to get there. Maybe just some time and
Yeah,
money,
it shouldn't be all
and
too difficult. Once you
yeah,
start getting a backing and start to gain traction, it will probably take off.
yeah.
So kind of keep that thought in mind as you're going forward. For those who want to find you online, how do they find you?
So you can find my website at jlynaddy.com. I've written the Pink Blanket novel under a pseudonym.
Can you spell that out for those who are listening for me?
Yeah,
Yep,
it's
I
just
saw it. I have it in front of me.
okay. Yeah, J.Lynn Lynn Addy ADY at .com. So, and that's my website. And then it's got links to my book, to just trying to get that up and running as well. I'm not a super technical person. Even writing my book was a whole new learning curve. So I'm trying to get that up and going, and getting all that kind of stuff, and all Pink Blanket and everything will be included on that website
I
until.
have it as JLYNNADY. I don't have the dot between the G.
Oh, sorry. Yes, there is no dot in my website. Right.
Making sure I had
Yes.
it.
Yes.
Okay, so it's
Sorry.
www.jlynnnady.com.
Yes.
Okay, making sure to clarify that for those who are listening, because it doesn't sound right. So you have about 5 or so minutes left. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Just that I this is where I get a little bit, I don't know. I just sometimes I just really
Maybe an
my
encouragement
big thing,
for somebody who's in the same situation.
yeah, and that's kind of where it's at, is just I mean it if you get that glimpse that you feel like you deserve better, or you know you deserve better, or you simply just want better, and if you're in living in those situations, I mean it's not always easy, it certainly isn't easy, and but just to know that there are people out there that do want to help and that are willing to help, and that there are resources, and just if you can find the courage to just go after it, because you don't, you know, there's so much better waiting on the other side, and like I said, I mean it's not easy, and so I just wish people could understand that you're not living for anybody else but yourself. And so the only person who's ever going to get you where you need to go is going to be you. But there are people along the way that are more than willing to help. And don't be afraid to reach out to those people, because it's amazing where you can end up from where you are if you are willing and able to make that leap.
Now, on your website, is there something on there where they can make like donations for the Pink Blanket campaign? Is that on there as well?
So at this point, it's not, because it has to, like I said, for the legal part, before we can accept donations and everything, it's got to be, everything has to be tied. But once everything is up and running, there will be links on the website for donating information, any kind of resources, any kind of thing like that. Once everything gets up and going, everything will be accessible on jaylinaddy.com.
Perfect. Well, Jamie, thank you so much for coming on. I'm glad we were able to get that sorted in the beginning, but
Yes.
you know, things happen. So I'm
Yes.
glad you're able to come, and thank you for sharing a portion of your heart, because like I said, I get it. I understand it. You're like, I don't know, we could be like sisters from another mister or something, because
Yeah.
we're like same line right there. So
Oh,
I
that's
I
awesome.
get you, and I understand it. So again, congratulations for taking the courageous step forward, and to not
Yeah.
only do something for you, but to do something for others and trying to get the Pink Blanket campaign started.
Thank
When
you.
you're coming out of these situations, you're really raw. So
Yeah.
something like a soft pink blanket that you could hold on to is like, you know, Schroeder and his blankie that he always had in Peanuts. I mean,
Yeah.
it's there, and they call it a security blanket for a reason. It makes you feel comfort.
Yeah.
So
And
thank you
that's,
for, you know, working as hard as you can to get it to people. You can provide that comfort to people coming out of that situation.
well, thank you very much for having me. I'm grateful to have this opportunity. It's wonderful to be able to meet people, and meet people like yourself who've been through the journey, and can appreciate those aspects as well, and just to be able to share my story. It's a great opportunity. So thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you guys for listening to The Journey is Real, where we talk to real people with real passions who share a real portion of their hearts. I'm CJ Peterson of cjpetersonwrites.com. Until next time.